You've made the discipline of marketing at General Motors better. That's a legacy.
Obviously, one person doesn't do this on their own, but they set a vision and they set some drive. They communicate implicitly at least what priorities are. The thing that I've been most focused on, what outcomes is marketing accountable for? Usually what happens is sales go up, marketing must have been awesome. Sales went down, it's the marketing that sucked. We looked at the consumer journey. We decided, hey, people don't really think about cars until they go into market and they start with 4 brands in mind, and 2/3 of the time they buy one of those 4 brands. So be in that initial consideration set and then win the shopping journey. Pretty straightforward. But once you know that, and then you track, I want to know what you're accountable for and how you're delivering it. But on the other hand, it helps people rise up. It helps them have autonomy and direction, and it enables a better creative process. Because now you have a learning system that's figuring out what can be great. And your success isn't based on the highest paid person, send you an email saying they like the ad. It's based on, are you getting to the outcomes that you're accountable for? And if not, what actions are you taking to get there?
Norm, welcome back to the CMO podcast, which we'll get to in a minute. But I've got to start with, I was here at the ANA meeting yesterday, and I was on West Coast time, so I was kind of sleepy getting up. I turned on my television, CNBC. Your CFO was on. Lovely guy, by the way. He seems super cool,
great.
super chill,
Yeah.
and fabulous earnings.
Oh my God.
Release. So, congratulations, and what the heck is going on that's so positive?
Which we did. And at the core of that is an amazing set of products. Yes, it's marketing and sales and engineering and manufacturing and everybody working together. Of course it is. But the GM of today, you probably haven't seen for 50 years.
Wow. It's a big statement.
Yeah. I mean, think about like when we grew up, GM's products, from the 70s, they were less competitive in the marketplace. That's the 70s. And now the products are winning in the marketplace. I mean, that's a long time, which is partially why we had to go through all the transformation we did. But you can't get there without, at the end of the day, having something your customers love.
Yeah. We'll talk about Paul for a bit. I mean, my impression watching it was, I'd like to hang out with this guy.
Yeah. Paul is very smart. He was also the CFO of Delta. So he's had these big jobs and he's super smart. I think what he thinks about, by the way, he also races cars, which is cool. Mm-hmm. When he thinks about marketing, he doesn't need to understand it all, but he needs to feel like there's a disciplined approach. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've worked with him on. And it's built a really strong relationship. Whereas I think because when there's not a feeling of a disciplined approach, what's in the CFO's mind? Could I just cut some more of that?
Right.
I don't really understand you, so let me see what happens if I just do this.
Yeah.
Right. So Paul's been a great partner from the day I started. I mean, I knew that was important to him, so I spent time getting, with him, of course, but really, really great.
How did you do that? How did you build the confidence and the conviction in what you're doing?
From the very beginning on the steering committee to develop the plan to grow the sales from marketing. And that person participated the whole way through. And so when we got to the plan, they knew it all. And because they felt confident, he felt confident.
Right. Where do you think that person added the most value? Because I did the same thing at P&G. When I came in as a new CMO, I asked the CFO if I could have a senior director to be on my team to help us figure this out, how to get better.
Yeah. They help you remember what's most important to that side. Remember that voice. And remember that at the end of the day, we do a lot in marketing. But the way that it matters to a business is generally through more sales. And enough more sales that cover the cost of the advertising. And when there are things that are nice to do's, when you're clear and transparent about them, people will come along. But when you try and make them sound like must do's, you lose credibility. And so this woman who we had was just a great partner at working through all those issues.
I was looking through my files before this interview, and we had a talk about 5 years ago, coincidentally, right around the A&A meeting.
Yeah.
And that one was virtual because it was 2020. But you had just made a speech at the A&A when you were at CVS about purpose and business growth. And I said to my team after I watched that virtually, that's one of the best talks I've ever seen about purpose and growth. And I may even have sent you an email to that effect.
You did, actually. I remember. Yeah. Because that was a big moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big stage. Well, you're on the big stage again this morning here at the A&A. Yeah. And I think the title was Rebirth.
Yeah.
So it's an intimidating stage for any of us.
Yeah.
You want to show well for your team and your company. There's 2,000 people in the audience, and it's a lot of thought leaders. So tell us a bit first. Were you nervous? And how did you handle that? And then what did you share today that you would like to talk about with our audience?
Yeah. So how could you not be nervous? Like you said, you want to show up well for your team, for your company, amongst your peers. I was a little bit less nervous than last time. Maybe it's the second time at the rodeo and you feel a little bit more comfortable. But yeah, you get the butterflies. And I just try to remember when I get those butterflies, that's energy. So just translate it into positive energy.
If they're not there, that's a problem.
Yeah, right. The story that I told today was a story about the history of marketing and product at GM. It gets into what we did over the last couple of years in marketing, but at its core, it's about staying close to the customer. And you can see in the history of GM when the product was very close to the customer and the sales accelerated. And you can see when it diverged and marketing was asked to cover that up. And it doesn't really work. In that era, we lost share. And it just, marketing didn't have the substance to work on. And so you got to trim your expenses. And marketing was one of those expenses that was trimmed. We had lower budgets. And at the same time, we had to launch more new vehicles in one time than probably at any point in the company's history, which are all expensive to launch because you got to create awareness of these things and desire for these things and demand for these things. And you got to keep the core business going too at the same time. So that just fundamentally required a different approach. You just can't say, well, I think we'll just do what we did last year. It's not a feasible or reasonable plan. And so that drove a tremendous amount of transformation in essentially every aspect of marketing. But at the core of it was GM owning more of its marketing activities. What had happened over time through nobody's fault is we had outsourced most of our marketing to our agencies. Agencies identified opportunities to grow and then followed up on the work and did it, which was great. Mm-hmm. But the problem with that is that it led to an underdevelopment of marketing capabilities within GM. And it made us slower and harder to move in a rapidly transforming world. And so we kind of had this slower to move, kind of more expensive model with less capabilities within GM. And that's what we had to change. So when you change that generates all the other changes because now you own it. And you're accountable for it. And that's like a big deal, by the way, as well, to get from the model we had to the model we wanted. At speed, the fastest thing to do was the RFP process and to reduce the scopes and then to hire the people in-house. Because as you know, no more money shows up when you're doing this, right?
Yeah.
As we went through that process, one of the things that we identified, which could be true in a holding company too, absolutely, but you really need creative teams that are solely focused on creative, the agencies teams that are solely focused on creative. And, I spent 14 years on the agency side too, right? So I've seen this from both sides. And I do see what happens when an agency gets more involved in your operations. It changes their culture. Mm-hmm. And then it changes the amount of voices in the creative process. And it's harder. The whole thing just becomes a little harder. And it's much easier to find an answer that doesn't annoy anyone, right? Yeah. Which isn't always that distinctive or compelling.
Yeah. So when you say you made changes internally so you would own it, you built internal capabilities, how did you attack that? I mean, where did you start? how did you decide what you wanted to build inside versus outside? And I'll give you a little comment. I've been an analyst in car companies since I've left P&G, and I'm often struck that, at P&G, marketing is a career. In some auto companies, it's not.
Yeah.
It's more of a job to be done. And people are moved in and out from other functions, and there is some benefit to that. But make no mistake, it's definitely a career at P&G with certain skills and capabilities and so on and so forth. So I'd just like you to go there a little bit. I think there's lots of learning in it.
Yeah, it's a discipline. There's not very much appreciation for how much a top marketer has to leverage both sides of their brain. It is a very hard job. Most jobs are kind of one or the other. But you go from technology discussions to creative discussions, and you have to be able to be facile in both of them. So there were some things that were very clear. Analytics, it was fragmented across the agencies and fragmented across internal groups, and mostly used to produce a scorecard that someone could pick a number out and say, well, didn't I do a good job? And we weren't going to do that.
Yeah.
So that was clear. Build out analytics. We're going to change the model there. I really do believe that for a lot of companies, having analytics close to the work is really important. That was clear. That sets the foundation for media and components of media. And so we were like, okay, so we want to do that. It took us a little bit longer to figure out the model on that because I still wanted external agencies because they see more than an internal company does. But we have a model on that. That when it got to creative, what I knew we wanted was more capabilities in-house. That's actually where I started. Then, as I thought about what we wanted in our agency partners, I also knew that the reality is that there's call it 60% of the work, which is like crank out the donuts, right? Like different versions of this, different sizes of that, stuff that's like just has to get done. And it can bury your creative agency. And I didn't want them buried by that. And also wanted a lower cost way to do a lot of that sort of stuff and faster way. So then we start going down this process. So we had this idea that we would have what we would call a foundational agency kind of down below that would do the 60%. And that we would have creative shops, a different one on 4 of our brands. But who they were or how it was going to work out, I didn't know. What I knew is I had to go through the process because I needed to hire the people within GM. So the first question on that I think some people have is, okay, so that was your vision, but there's a lot of people at GM that probably have a voice in that and that have an opinion on that. I'd say that GM was pretty darn open. It was pretty darn open. Or maybe the people who were against it didn't say it to me. Right? Yeah. But they were pretty darn open. And so it kind of brought everyone along a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you have all the right people participating in the process and all that sort of stuff. We discovered as we got through the process towards the end that it just happened to be that what we had selected were smaller agencies for the creative for each of our brands. And then as we were doing this, that's when the AI thing started taking off. And so we moved from this idea of what would have essentially just been a lower cost production shop to actually it should be AI at the core. And that changed what we were looking for on that one. And we're still building that out. But
yeah, it's a great story. That's pretty profound. And you've made the discipline of marketing at General Motors better.
Oh my God. This is what I'm proud of.
That's a legacy.
Obviously, one person doesn't do this on their own, but they set a vision and they set some drive and they communicate implicitly at least what priorities are. But here was like the thing that I've been most focused on. What outcomes is marketing accountable for? Because usually what happens is sales go up, marketing must have been awesome. Sales went down, it's the marketing that sucked. And it may be true or it may not be true. But the problem that does for marketers is it makes success in their job be, does the person who cares about sales care about their work? And that is not a good system. You need a much more disciplined system on that. And so our system, it's like not a genius idea. We looked at the consumer journey, we decided, hey, people don't really think about cars until they go into market and they start with 4 brands in mind, and 2/3 of the time they buy one of those 4 brands. So be in that initial consideration set and then win the shopping journey. Okay, pretty straightforward. But once you know that, and then you track How often are you in the initial consideration set? How much should you be in the initial, with whom, by the way? Not every truck buyer, premium truck buyers or whatever, right? And then track the shopping journey. That system, it's another thing about accountability. I think when you get to outcomes, there's also nervousness. Because in some ways, there's a lot of camaraderie within the whole teams of like, oh, we do it together and sales are there. And because we're tight, it'll be good. And when you say, no, I want to know what you're accountable for and how you're delivering it, that's a little bit more nerve-wracking. But on the other hand, my experience has been, it helps people rise up, it helps them exhale, it helps them have autonomy and direction, and it enables a better creative process because now you have a learning system that's figuring out what can be great. And you're working on that. And your success isn't based on, does the highest paid person send you an email saying they like the ad? It's based on, are you getting to the outcomes that you're accountable for? And if not, that actually might still be okay, but what actions are you taking to get there?
Yeah. It's clarity, right?
Yeah.
People want clarity.
And autonomy.
Yeah. So what was the reaction to the talk this morning? I know it's early.
People are nice. People are nice. They've been very nice. I think it's been good. I wanted to tell the story, but I also wanted people to see that the General Motors of today is not the General Motors that many of them might be thinking about.
Yeah.
I live in Boston, so I get the East Coast things, particularly the Northeast, and there's a different impression of GM there, I can tell you, than there's the reality of what is happening. So I think there's been pretty good reaction.
Yeah. You've been here a couple of days, right? What do you think about the meeting this year? I mean, what's the zeitgeist, do you feel? I know AI is everywhere.
Right.
But anything else you're feeling?
I think anxiety is connected to AI. Change, what's out there. I think if you're on the agency side, you're worried about it. I think if you're on the client side, you're worried about it. Maybe different reasons, but it's maybe a little overhyped. I think one of the things that we've learned is it's really hard for AI to understand your brand. And it's really hard for AI to understand taste. And so you really need a creative director involved. And sometimes it's actually faster just to shoot it than it is to figure out the magic prompt to get the thing to do what you want it to do. Because you're like, I just need to move the table over there. So here's an interesting thing we learned, which maybe some know, but when you ask it to we have a car, say in a driveway with a tree, and you say, move the tree. It doesn't just move the tree. It actually has to re-render the entire picture, which means it can now make a mistake in the car. And now you're fixing the mistake in the car, but the driveway changed different color. And you're just like, Jesus, this is just like a waste of time, frankly. So it is going to get there. And we do have examples of when it's working really well. But I think we are a little bit in that stage of the excitement might be over the reality. And now, but look, maybe in 4 months that changes. It could change that rapidly. It's just that there's a lot in this. And on the brand side, the problem is, it's looking for the most likely next answer. That's going to take you to the average of your category. And even if you put your stuff in there and you say, no, look at my stuff, it can do that. But you're like a pebble compared to all the other information it has. And so now you got to weight it right. But then how much do you weight it? And what's the right amount of each ingredient in the recipe? So there's just a lot to figure out, which will be figured out. But it's, so I think AI is there. I think it's just a little, we still got more to figure out. In fact, I would say like every company is thinking right now, do I need all these open recs?
Right.
What I see from my seat is right now it's creating more work. Because you're not confident enough that it's going to give you the answer that you need creatively. So you have to keep the old system moving, and you have to do this new thing that you're trying to figure out. So I think 26 will be the more work year. I think 27 you're going to start to see maybe we figure some things out.
So at the meeting this year, did you see a presentation or have a chat with anyone or meet a new company that was interesting to you this year?
Well, Mark Pritchard, it's always great.
P&G.
And, I think everybody can learn from what P&G has done, from this complexity that's there that has to get dealt with. And so I think that's always good. There was a speaker about AI professor this morning. I thought he was pretty interesting as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just getting started. The
Right. We're
days really
midweek.
start. Yeah. I think if you're a marketer, it's a really good conference to see what other people are doing. Now, look, everything looks shiny and happy, right?
On
of
the
course,
stage.
around the stage. But I have learned something at every single one of these that I've been to. And if you just take away one thing from one talk, it's better than you were before.
Right. When you go back home, what do you do with the data that you gather at a conference like this? Do you have a little debrief with your team? Do you bring your team here?
We do bring some people here. We generally bring it back, but you'll take the thing and then you'll have a meeting with your leadership team about the thing.
Yeah. Right.
And then figure out how to push on that.
Yeah.
And maybe the thing that I'm working on is maybe not spinning up too many initiatives. So I have to be careful about
focus. Focus. Now, you are someone who is pretty active in industry work, right? MMA, ANA, Ad Council. Why is that important to you? How do you think it helps you in your role at General Motors and your role as a leader?
I feel like for a long time, I was in my career trying to be better, learn more, do more. I think what's happened in the last, 10 years is a desire to elevate the perception of the profession of marketing. And to also do better marketing.
Yeah.
Right. And these two things go together. That's where I've spent a lot of my time because I think we can all appreciate that in many companies, marketing is not as much at the SLT table as operations are. And most CEOs come from operations or they come from finance. So it's the stuff they feel more comfortable with. And those things are very important. It's not that they're not. Both marketers have an obligation to speak a language and to act in a way that's different than marketing when they're at the SLT table. And I think the CEOs and the CFOs have an obligation to better understand and care about this thing they're spending a lot of money on.
You worked for GMM at Digitas.
Yes, I did.
Years ago. Did that have any role?
Yeah, it had a lot of role. Well, there's two things. One is that was, let's say, call it 15 years ago now, okay? I saw GM at that stage. It was a very different company than it is today. Not just products, culture. The culture of GM at that point was very proud. The products were not as competitive as they need to be. Now, Mary has created a culture that's actually much more humble and the products are great. So it's kind of the inverse of that. And I think there's something about those two things that go together. The second thing I saw was I think I began to see it, even at that stage, this problem of outsourcing your marketing. I would see stuff that was great that we were bringing to clients, and I would see stuff that was like, what? And the clients bought it. And I just thought this could be a little tighter. And to get tighter, clients had to be more disciplined, more skilled in the discipline of marketing to understand this stuff. And so I think when I came into GM this time, the combination of the experience at CVS and having served them from the agency side gave me a kind of a pretty good bit of knowledge to know where to go.
Talk a bit more about your CVS role. It was a iconic company when it comes to purpose and symbolic acts and activating purpose. And I think GM is on a similar journey, right? So how did that help prepare you for what you've been doing the last 2.5 years?
Well, first, you're right about the purpose. Well, this weekend I looked at that old speech because I was like, I'm getting ready for this speech.
Yeah.
And there are things in healthcare that can touch your heart like nothing else. Because at the end of the day, health is everything. So that was purpose. You could feel it deeply there because it is connected to like something lower on Maslow's hierarchy that we all care about.
Yeah.
In some ways, GM is actually more about passion, and that was more about health. GM is on this journey, and I think we're getting there. Like, if you look at GM, a lot of the news will say manufacturing. And in some ways, it's kind of defined the company as very narrowly in like a factory company that employs workers. And what I've worked really hard over the last couple of years, and in fact, the video we had at the end of the speech is really all about this, which is to change the narrative about GM within the company and outside the company to simply be, we make products people love. people, I did this thing. I went to ChatGPT when I was working on this, and I was like, describe Apple, describe, I don't know, pick other cool companies. And GM, it says, an automotive manufacturer based in Detroit. Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you can see, and yet we're making products. And today, half the products, technology, there's more code in some of our cars than there is in a fighter jet. That's kind of where the purpose is coming back. And in fact, we then you take product, you turn it into an ad, a purpose, you turn it into an ad. So today, the line that I love is more Americans fall in love and stay in love with vehicles from GM than from any other auto manufacturer, which is true. And that's our job, make products people love.
Beautiful. So your role here, compare and contrast it to your role at CVS. How is this job different?
Look, the scale of the marketing is larger at GM for sure. The scale of complexity was much higher at CVS. Maybe you've got, people say, oh, well, what about the dealers or something like that? The dealers I've found to be fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, honestly, these dealers, the top ones, who are really the people I generally interact with, they're super smart. They're close to the customer. They know what works. They're digitally savvy. They're all over social. Like, they're great. We have a lot less products. We have like 30-something products, right? So we don't have 50,000. That was CVS. And the thing about CVS, because in retail, it's like the Marine Corps for marketing. Like, it's like, where's the money every day, right? And so it builds your skills and resilience and ideas and opportunity and entrepreneurialism that way. Automotive, brand matters more. And so that's been great and a lot of fun. But at the same time, it has to manifest in something. And it has to manifest towards the sales. And what's really interesting about GM, and I think you're kind of right when you talked about car companies like versus a P&G in terms of marketing being a career at P&G. And certainly they did have people rotating through marketing at GM. My question for our team is, why can't we be the best marketers in the world? And look, we have medallion products. What do you drive? People judge you by that. It's called brand, right? And so part of the journey that I've been on is like building out the approach we take to marketing so that people can be seen as world-class marketers, and it can be a profession there because all the raw elements are there.
Yeah. When we talked last 5 years ago, we talked about your leadership style, and you said you like to lead with high expectations and kindness.
Yes.
So talk about that now, 5 years later, and still a core belief. My guess is yes. But how are you operationalizing it at GM?
I'd say it's core belief. Maybe there's also like a relentless pursuit of ideas to drive the business too. In terms of things I value and in terms of the way I operate.
It's high expectations.
Yeah, it's high expectations. I think with high expectations, you create esprit de corps. And esprit de corps is important because it makes everyone rise up. And they feel proud, and then it creates more innovation and more ideas. And so it keeps going that way. I think that kindness, that does not have to be at the exclusion of kindness. And, it's the way I operate. It's the way I'm going to operate. And it may or may not always be the winning formula, but it is the world in which I want to live.
Yeah. You have a strong principle, and I've heard you quoted on this, to stay very close to the customer. And you feel this is important for everyone. I do too, but especially for the CMO, the head of strategy, and the head of research and insights. How do you bring that to life, that idea of staying close to the customer? I know you can role model it, but you said these 3 roles are especially important. So how do you make sure you do it? It's part of daily work. People see it. People feel it.
Yeah. One thing that is very helpful, I saw it at CVS. Like, you go to the store and you work in the store, you listen to the customers. I also wanted my office to be, actually, at CVS, I wanted it to be like a one-way mirror over a store. They keep it real. At GM, it's not directly to the customer, but indirectly is the dealers who interact with customers all day long. I really like that because what's happening with a dealer is they're running 100 experiments a day on which lines are working best for,
right.
And that's insight. Right. And that's insight that we can use almost better in some cases than a consumer insight, because they're like, that's the line that I see the sparkle in their eye. Like, we could do something with that. It is really, really important. And I think what happens at these big companies, you kind of just think of the center of gravity. When you're small, it sits entirely with the customer because you like can't pay your mortgage. So you're like, whatever you want, I'll make that. At a big company, the center of gravity is mostly inside.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get pulled away. And therefore, what can happen is it makes decisions that have a negative impact on your customers, subtly, but over time adds up, feel okay. When you get to customer centricity, it can be really hard for it to win out sometimes in companies. Why? Because a better customer experience doesn't pay off tomorrow. If you become too focused on eking out the next EBIT quarter, it feels like you can get away with a bad experience quarter after quarter after quarter until you can't. And so what I've seen at GM, which is really interesting because it's customer, but it's also creativity because it's a company that designs products, right? It's a creativity in that. Partially the way it works is that the senior most leaders just give space from all the people who want to, nip at the edges for creativity. And that makes a huge difference. Like if I was to be CEO of a big company, I mean, that's like, remember that. It is very easy and almost gravitationally will pull you towards make the decision that puts a better number on the page today. And as a CEO, your job is to say no. And I know it's easier said than done, but it's your job.
Yeah. You work for one of the great CEOs of the world, Mary Barra. She's well written about, top woman executive, top executive in the world. I've read millions of stories about her. It's a bit of an exaggeration, but I admire her greatly.
Yeah.
So talk about that a bit. You've been working with her for almost 2.5 years. What is not talked about enough or written enough about Mary?
I think something Mary does incredibly well is she works to make herself not the center of attention in a meeting or in a room. And by that, it brings out more voices. So there's more discussion. It's really remarkable. She has also created a leadership team, likable, by the way, like pretty easy to talk to. I mean, I think like I had her with my team and everybody's like, that was just so much more normal than we expected. I think that's a huge skill for a CEO.
What is she most passionate about in marketing?
The brands. She needs the brands to be strong. What's very important to Mary too is not just her legacy, although that's of course important to everybody, but she doesn't talk about it very much. It's that she leaves the company in a better spot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's deeply felt. Like I think when you have a company that's the size of General Motors in the state of Michigan, like it's not just a theoretical thing about a company. It's like, how are you helping the state? And how are you helping all these people? And how are you setting it up for the long term? In fact, if you look at, this is like I just admire her so much for this.
No, there's a lot of pride in Michigan. My son lives there.
Yeah.
My daughter-in-law. So I feel they live in the city. Producer Judy's from Michigan. Yeah, she's nodding her head. So listen, I want to flip to the creative brief, and then we have a little audience here. I want to bring them in for any questions. They're all smiling out there. So we'll bring you in soon. So the first one I have for you is your goal for your creative work. I love this, is 3 Ds: to be distinctive, desirable, and to drive demand. So all the great work you're doing, which work do you think does that the best?
Let me say that on every brand, there's work that I think does that great.
Mm-hmm.
I think when I look at the work that came out on GMC, the depth of how it brought out the desired image of the buyer was something I'm like, well, they just nailed it. They nailed it. Now, there's, again, work on every brand. I think that Chevy's got some incredible work and some great plans as well, and Buick and Cadillac as well. But like, I think the GMC work just really nailed it. And I drove a GMC before I showed up to GM, so it's always been kind of like part of my DNA. And by the way, that brand, it transacts at prices that are like, you're talking Mercedes territory, and it's now just killing it in volume. Yeah.
I love the 3Ds.
Yeah.
Has that been around for a while? Did you come to that?
It came to me on the spur of the moment, and I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty
It's good for any company. Actually.
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of our job, right?
Yeah, right. It puts our job into very simple language.
Yeah. Distinctiveness is important.
Yeah. So you spent a lot of your career at Digitas, 14 years total.
Yeah.
Can you think of one campaign or initiative there that stands out in terms of meaningfulness to you?
Well, work we did with Bank of America on the relaunch was very big. There was a moment we did work with U2, and that's fun.
Yeah.
So that was kind of memorable. And but there were a lot of things. I mean, it's just I have to dig deeply into the memory banks for that one.
I won't let you do that.
Yeah, right.
Last time when you were in the show, I always ask guests this: what's the first brand you remember making an impact on you as a young boy? You said at that time breakfast cereals. So do you stand by that, or is there something else that had an impact on you as a young boy?
I kind of stand by that. Not because like I love breakfast cereals, but because when I was a kid, there were essentially 3 channels of TV, and you watched it on Saturday morning, and I can still to this day remember what those slogans are, right? And that's
a category is having its own troubles right now.
Yes,
right?
I know.
Yeah.
They but remember Silly Rabbit Tricks Are for Kids?
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Great people want to create and build something. And when they feel like they're going to come to a place and be able to create and build something versus manage something, they get inspired. Now, GM's also can be a great, brand on your resume and other things like that. But that alone wouldn't have been enough. The leaders we have are the leaders who came because they could build out what they were doing. And that's motivating. My first job, I was a lifeguard at a hotel pool. That was fun. I love the second part of your question. And I think it's so important because we get lost in many things. And it's a reminder of maybe what you've accomplished. My 7-year-old self would never think I would be where I am today. It just wasn't even on the radar. I'm not sure exactly what I thought I'd be, but it was smaller. And it's a good reminder for all of us when we feel the stresses and the pressures and all that sort of stuff. You're doing all right. You're doing all right.
Okay. Who's been the most inspiring person in your life?
The people who see in me more than I see in myself and push me to go there. And there are different answers depending on what that thing is. But those are the people that I'm forever grateful to.
So when you were young, was that your parents or a sibling?
Yes. So I am the child of immigrants. And so to that extent, immigrants, let's be clear, they're from the Netherlands. But my point to that is America was full of opportunity. My parents built a company here that paid for our stuff. They had the American dream. I saw it. And so what I took from them is, you want to do something, just go do it. And that has never stopped driving me. It's also maybe a little bit of pressure because you can, you should.
Sure. What line of business was it that they built?
There's a company called Nambe that's luxury kind of tableware. It's sold in Saks and all kinds of places.
Oh, wow.
It's actually made with
I didn't know that.
an alloy that came out of the Los Alamos National Laboratories.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I want to end this conversation with the question Bob Leodes asked after. He probably asked it of you today after your speech was over. And that's, I'll twist it a little bit, but he asked people what they're going to do when they go back. What did you learn from this? Yeah. So my question to you is, for our audience, what's one thing you'd like to leave them with, that may be inspired by what we just talked about or what you've experienced at this meeting this week?
I think that the message I would leave them with is, to be a successful marketer, you do need your head and strategy, but you can never forget that your hands need to be in the kitchen sink. And if you don't do that, when periods of rapid change and transformation show up, you'll be too far removed from it. So keep your hands in the sink.
Your parents probably did that with their business, right? They did. Norm, thank you. Did we talk about everything you wanted to talk about?
Jim, we did. It's just always a pleasure. I could interview you, and I think it might actually be even more interesting.
No, it won't be, but we can do that someday.
Yeah,
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
Jim.
you. This
Thanks,
is
Jim.
wonderful. And congratulations on everything.
Thanks so much.